Hi, my name is Mike McClin, and in this video I'm going to show you how to use one users table for multiple WordPress installations. Okay, so right now I've just got a blank database called Mike McClin, and I've also got two WordPress installations ready to go. One is this mikemclin.dev. I've placed the installation inside of this mmwp directory, and the other one's mikemclin.net.dev. So the mikemclin.dev is actually just a localhost version, my local server, of what the mikemclin.com production site is. And this one obviously is for my mikemclin.net production site. Okay, so I'm going to want to use the same user table for both of these sites, and this is how I'm going to do it. First off, let me just verify. If I go to mikemclin.dev, I can see that we're starting at the very beginning. We don't even have a WP config file yet. And the same thing for mikemclin.net.dev. No WP config file. So we're going to have to decide which WordPress installation needs to be the main installation for all of our user information. And I'm going to choose this mikemclin.dev, which is my mikemclin.com website. Okay, so I need to come in here and find the WP config sample and go ahead and make some changes. So this is Mike McClin is the database name. And I'm just using some defaults for my local host here. This is obviously not the safest method. Okay, so now we've got all those configured. We need to go ahead and grab our salt values. Copy that, come back over to the browser, paste that in, select all those, copy it. I'm going to close this tab and switch back to my code editor. Okay, so I'm pasting all those in, so now we have all of our salt values. And the last thing we want to do is change our table prefix. Now this is necessary. All the installations will have to exist on the same database, so they're all going to have different table prefixes. It's also a good idea, just for security purposes, not to use this WP underscore. So I'm going to change this to mmcom, since this is going to be for my mikemclin.com website. And now I'm going to save it. Let's switch back over and let's do the installation. If I refresh, oh, actually, I saved the sample file. I need a file save as, and just save it as WP config, save. Now when I switch back and refresh, we're going to get this error that the install PHP was not found, and that's because we actually didn't install WordPress or didn't place our files in the root directory. But if you remember, we put them in that mmwp directory. So I'll put that in there and we're good to go. So now we're just going to do the installation as normal. We do mikemclin.com. So that's actually what the website is for this one. And go ahead and create the password. Put my email in and do the installation. Okay, everything installs like normal. If I log in and check everything out. Okay, perfect. So we're in here. And the next step now is we're going to have to integrate this mikemclin.net.dev site into this installation. So if I come over here and look at the database, currently we can see we have all the tables for our mmcom underscore installation. Okay, so to help us out with this, we can actually look at, do a Google search for WordPress, edit the WP config file, and it's going to take you to this codex page, the WordPress codex page on editing the file. And if you scroll down here, you're going to see a topic here, custom user and user meta tables. So I'll click that, it'll take me down to that section. It's going to explain how the whole process works, but I'm getting ready to walk you through it anyways, so just showing you kind of where the documentation is for this. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is in our first WP config that we created, all these values are going to be the same. We're going to have to use the exact same database, so the credentials, the username and password will be the same. And also another thing is, since we're going to be using the same user table, our salt values all have to be the same. So we actually need to keep all these values. We don't want to generate new secret keys for the website. One thing we will be changing is the table prefix. So let's actually come into our mikemclin.net, and in our mmwp, let's just create a new file, and we're going to save it as wp-config, and that'll be the wp config for this website. So we'll just go ahead and copy all this, select all from the other website, and paste it in here. And the only thing we need to change, like I said, is this net, because we want it to install as mmnet underscore instead of mmcom underscore. And that'll allow us to have two different installations on the same database table. Okay, there is another step. If we come back over here to the documentation, we're going to have to define these custom user tables. So there's two constants here that we need to copy and combine. If I come over here, and you can put this wherever, I'm just going to put it right here. So the custom user table, which table is the table that we're going to want to use as the user table for this installation, is essentially what it's asking. And the same with the user meta. And if you remember, if we come back over here and look, we're wanting to use this mmcom underscore user meta and mmcom underscore users. So we will get rid of this example stuff here, and we're going to have it be mmcom is what we're going to want to use for our users table, and mmcom for our user meta table. So now when I save this, I can begin installation. I come over here, and now I'm at the mikemclin.net.dev. If I refresh, we're going to get that same error, and that's because we're actually not in the root directory, but we're going to install in the mmwp directory. That's just a good security practice, not to install it in your root directory. Okay, and so the website name for this one will be mikemclin.net. The email be mikemclin@gmail.com. And you'll notice here it says we don't have to create a user file, because it says the users already exist. And that's because we are using the user table from the other installation. Okay, let me install WordPress. Now I'm not sure if it always does this, but this is kind of like a weird thing. Like every time I've always done this, I get these errors here. It doesn't really make a difference because I'm going to show you how to get around everything anyways, but for some reason in this WordPress installation, it throws these two errors, and also it says it creates this admin file or this admin user with this password, but that actually is never created. So that's the first step that's kind of misleading, but where it really gets confusing is when I log in and I say, okay, well, I'm using the other user table. Let me go ahead and log in using the credentials that I've created on the other installation, which is an admin user role. And if I log in, now all of a sudden I get this. You don't have sufficient permissions to access this page, and you basically don't have anything to go on here. And you can see it's labeling it up here in the title bar as a WordPress error. So it's kind of confusing, but actually everything is working properly. You are using the users table, and we know that because you were able to log in and see this message. So if I come over here and show you the tables now, you can see we do have mmcom user meta and users table, but we don't have one for the mmnet installation. Okay, what is happening actually is when you come over here and you look at the user meta, this is basically where it stores all the information about an account, and it stores things like the first name, last name, all those things you can edit in your profile. We'll also store, this is where it stores your capabilities, and capabilities are on a per installation basis. So you can see here we have mmcom capabilities. So what we need to do is actually this mmcom capabilities, we need to create one of those for the mmnet installation. But it needs to go into this user meta table, because this is the user meta table that we have defined in our WP config. So it goes over this a little bit down here, explains this. Essentially, this is the value you're going to want to put in there. So let me actually come back over here and show you how we're going to do this. So we can see the user ID for all these is 1. That's because we only have one user. If I come over here to users and browse, we have this Mike McClin user with the ID of 1. And that is the user we're going to want to create the credentials for, or the user role for. So we need to remember this 1 ID. So when I come over here, and if I insert, what I want to do is the user ID we know is 1, and the meta key is going to be mmnet capabilities, and then the value will be this serialized array here that we copied from the wp-config, edit the wp-config page. Where are we at? Okay. Okay, so if I hit go, now we can see it's created it, and if I come over here, or it's inserted I should say, and browse this, I can now see we have mmnet capabilities for the user with a user ID of 1, and the capabilities are administrator. The user role is administrator. So if I come over here now and refresh again, now you can see we're an administrator. This, just to prove that we're using the same table and this is all working, if I came over here to my profile, which I'm in, and I I put my first name as Mike and updated the profile. Now when I come back over here to this installation and look at the users, I can see that Mike has been assigned here as well. You're also going to get this weird notice on your original installation saying that there's been an auto-generated password. That's pretty much just a bug. It's because when we installed the second installation, it created that auto-generated password for that admin account, if you remember that, the account that had a username of admin, but it never really even created that account. It's just all kind of quirky and doesn't work right. Anyways, you can basically just ignore this because it's not true. So just click no thanks. And just to show, once again, I can edit this user, put my last name of McClin, update the profile. If I come over here and look at users, I can see the McClin has been added. Okay, so we're going to run into some other issues now. What's going to happen here is managing the user accounts has been set up and is working, but you're also going to need something to manage your roles. So to show you this as an example, if I come over here and I add a new person, John Doe website.com, and I give it a password, and I create this person as an editor. I can add the new user, and everything looks good. We have John Doe, and he's an editor. Well, if I come back over to this installation and look at all users, we can see John Doe was added, but he doesn't have a role. So the problem is you have what's called an orphaned role right now. What could happen is someone could come in here, and an administrator could come in here and hit edit and go ahead and give John a role. If someone doesn't do that, this is what John will see. He'll see the same thing on this installation. On the other installation, everything's great. He'll log in, he'll see the normal editor privileges. On this one, since he doesn't have a role, he's going to have that orphaned user role warning message, or error message I should say, that says you don't have sufficient permissions to access this page. And this is really kind of a non-desirable thing to happen. Much better thing is there's a WordPress plugin that's going to fix this for you. Okay, if I come over here and if I go to plugins and choose add new, you search for wp-orphanage. And what this will do is it's going to fix all your orphaned user roles. So I can see there's two different versions. We have the normal and the extended. If you view the details on the this normal one, you can see the last time it was updated was over 1,000 days ago. I look at the details on this one, I can see it was just updated 9 days ago. So obviously this is the newer version, and it's the one that's currently being maintained. So this is the one I'm going to want to install. I've actually already downloaded this plugin and put it in my directory. So all I need to do really now is just activate it. So I come over here to my installed plugins, and I'm going to activate the plugin. And now what's going to happen is if I come over here to my settings, I'm going to have this wp-orphanage-extended. Okay, so what this does is it basically says if there is a user and it doesn't have a role, what it's going to do is it's going to look in whatever WordPress installation prefix that you put in here, and if it finds the role, it's going to assign that role to it. If it doesn't find that role for the user, then it's just going to create the subscriber role, and I can make this be whatever. So if I just leave this like this, and it's not going to find it in the mmcom installation because it was created on the mmnet installation. So what's going to happen is, since there's no user role defined already in the mmcom installation, it's going to give it a default role of subscriber. So if I come over here and look at my users, we can see now instead of having no role, he has a role of subscriber. Okay, let's go ahead and install that on the other website as well. And I've already actually downloaded it. I just need to activate it. Okay, so let's say another way this can work is, it all depends on how you want your installation to work, but maybe you want to always use the user roles from the mmcom website. Whenever something's created over there, you want to go ahead and make sure that those user roles are trickled over here to this mmnet site. So what you would do is you would say, if it's created on the mmcom site, look at the mmcom installation. If you find a user role, assign it. If not, then we'll fall back to subscriber. So if I save changes, now if I come back over here to the original site and the mmcom site and add, say, Jane Doe, and we're going to make Jane an author, add a new user, and we can see she was created. If I come over here and look at the users and look at all users, we can see she was created and she gained that author role because it was not able to find the role initially, and what it did was it looked at that mmcom installation where where the role of Jane is an author, and basically assigned that role here. Personally, I like to leave these always as subscriber, and I just have it look through its own installation. I prefer assigning user roles to each member on each website independently. So, for example, just because someone's an administrator on one site, I might not want them to be an administrator on the other site. So I usually always have these kind of default back to subscriber. And by doing that, just with this, the default settings, by using its own installation prefix, that's what's going to end up happening. It's not going to find it, and it's going to fall back to subscriber. And then an administrator can go in there and update the user role for each user on a case-by-case basis as needed. Okay, so taking what we've learned, we can actually now make creating or implementing this whole second website really easy. So instead of having to go in there, and if you remember before, we went in here and we had to come in the user meta table and edit all those files, or edit or insert that mmnet capabilities record. Instead of having to go through and do all that, there's actually just a really simple way, I think. The easiest way is, let me come in here and let me delete the mmnet installation. Drop this, yes. So if I come over here, you see it's not found again. If I do this, now we're back to the installation. Of course, since we have this constants defined, it's saying that the users already exist, but what we actually don't want to do that. what we want to do is just install it like normal. So let it have its own user table. Now when I refresh this page, you get your normal installation screen where you also have to create a user account. Now just to verify this is all working, let me come in here and in this mmcom user meta, let's go ahead and where that mmnet capabilities, we're just going to delete just where's mmnet capabilities for user ID 1. Let's just go ahead and just delete this. Just do a little cleanup to make sure that that user account is not integrated into this user meta table yet. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do mikeMcClin.net. I'm going to set up my username for my admin account, and I'm going to install. Okay, now I can log in like normal. And I'm logged in. And now it's just like we have two different websites. Neither one knows about the other. If I come over here and look at my database, I can see I have a user meta and user table for my mmnet installation. Okay, so now that we've got it set up, what I would do is I'd come in here and I'd add the wp-orphanage, which I've already added, and I would activate it. Now that's activated, I would come in here and I would change the settings to make it an administrator. So now when it doesn't find the role, it's going to assign it a role of administrator. I'll save that, and now I'm going to bounce back to my code editor, and I'll uncomment these lines. So I can save this and come back, and now if I just go anywhere, say I go to my dashboard, it's going to prompt me to log back in. And essentially, since we've redefined those constants, these two tables are no longer in use. And just to prove that, I'll go ahead and delete them. That's also maybe a good practice, just to make it obvious to anyone looking at your database what's going on. Okay, so let's log in. And what's going to happen is it's not going to have a user role defined. But since we've already installed that the plugin, the wp-orphanage-extended plugin, it's going to say, well, let me look and try to find it. If it can't find a user role, it's going to assign it a user role of administrator, which is what we want. So now when I log in, here we go. Everything worked good. We didn't get that user permission error, and we never had to come in here and modify this user meta table. If I come over here and we sort this by descending, we can see it just created it for us. Where is it? Let me just search by user ID. mmnet capabilities, here it is. So it created this for us. So we didn't have to do anything. And that's it. So now both tables are linked. And oh, actually the one last thing you're going to do is you're probably going to want to come back to this and you're going to want to change this back to subscriber because you don't want the default role to be administrator. And that's it. That's how you use a single WordPress user table for multiple installations.